Storyteller presents AskReddit question. What conspiracy theory do you completely believe is true? I am in the Navy, and we change uniforms a lot compared to other branches. There's a conspiracy theory that there's a rear admiral whose wife has stocks in the company that makes our uniform. I just randomly heard someone talking about it. I have zero evidence that it's true, but I 100% believe it. Edit. Told this to my coworker who added to the conspiracy cause he said the people who sell our uniforms is run by a rear admiral. The plot thickens. Edit 2. Apparently there's more people saying there's more to the conspiracy, so if you see this be sure to head into the replies and give them some upvotes. This kind of blew up and you guys rock. Yeah, the Navy seems to change their uniforms way too much. My brother-in-law mentioned how the Navy wastes billions of dollars every year purely on uniforms. Forgot the specifics, but yeah. College Board isn't non-profit. Every high school student just sighed in understanding. Teachers too. I used to start my AP PSYC class, do you want to pass a test, or learn some sweet crap about your brain? Once I knew the two kids who cared about the test, the class was super fun, and I just gave extra test prep to the kids who wanted it. Usually had a handful pass, and none of the bullshit teaching to a test. Man, fuck College Board. All my homies hate College Board. Disney absolutely believed that Hillary Clinton was going to win the 2016 election, so they started building her animatronic for the Hall of Presidents well in advance, and after Trump pulled off a victory, instead of starting from scratch, they just kind of made a couple half-assed adjustments to the Hillary model and put it up on stage. Edit. Thanks for all the awards. I know I am not the first person to ever notice this or even the first to post about it on Reddit, but I am glad I was able to introduce it to so many people. I read this and immediately didn't believe it. Then I saw the picture. Either this theory is 100% true or Disney, the undisputed pioneers in everything theme park related, suddenly became the worst engineers in the world for exactly as long as it took to build this animatronic. Trump winning literally ruined the season of South Park that year because they wrote it with the intention that Trump or Garrison would lose. Britney is the highest profile Disney rape victim we might probably ever know about. Her mental breaks were the result of sexual and physical abuse from her handlers, her parents, and people she worked with at Disney. The conservatorship she's been trying to get lifted is one designed to keep her silent, because the momentum of the Me Too movement as well as the high-profile cases against Hollywood folks will result in a huge financial hit to Disney. If we hear that Britney couldn't take it anymore and killed herself, it's most likely the result of everyone in her life trying to control and manipulate her, and they will likely kill her under guise of suicide. Reminds me of that story about one song that she gave to that radio station one night. She came uninvited, bare feet, and did a Q&A about her new album. Then suddenly the album never happened. The lyrics to the song that they played on the radio got changed to the point where it sounded like she's crying for help or something. It was kind of creepy to me. Just a casual fan of this one, but that Christopher Walken knows whether Natalie Wood's death was an accident or not. Yeah. I think this too. He was there the whole time. Boat's not all that big. He knows for sure. All that stupid stuff shared on Facebook is just a way for people to mine your information for forgotten passwords, resets and stuff. Things like bet no one remembers the street they grew up on. I'll wait. Or what would your name be if you took your mom's name instead of your dad's thinking face? Actually, how hacking is mainly done, LOL. Not much hacking into the mainframe, mostly just social engineering. Not a specific theory, but I have no doubt that the majority of leaks for the entertainment industry, video games, movies, TV, etc. are completely purposeful and meant to gauge general opinions before official announcements. Edit. Spelling. Thanks for my first ever awards. They're called trial balloons and they absolutely exist. They exist in politics. They exist in products. They exist in every industry with any amount of money. In law enforcement too. Sometimes investigators leak particular facts to the press in order to see how certain individuals respond to it. This is one of those that just makes so much sense, yet somehow it's never occurred to me until now. Well, the government is listening to everyone's phone calls and reading our emails was once considered a conspiracy theory, and we all know how that turned out. Many years ago, I walked into a Barnes & Noble and spotted a guy sitting alone at a card table near the entrance, the table stacked with books. We had a nice chat. He told me how he got started writing the book, his first. He was teaching at a prep school where the Secret Service showed up at 7:00 a.m. and banged on a dorm door. The person had emailed the night before, words to the effect that someone should shoot the president. That got the author interested in the NSA, and he wrote a novel about it. While researching the book, he was emailing with various ex-NSA people to get background on the agency. One time he emailed, "Should we be encrypting these emails?" He received a reply stating 1. There isn't any encryption you could do that would hinder the NSA. 2. I am not telling you anything I shouldn't. And 3. The plutonium arrives on Thursday, praise Allah. Dan Brown before he hit it big. Maybe not Tupac. But at least one celebrity has faked their death, and is still out there. If it's anyone, it's Andy Kaufman. Kaufman sure seems like the most likely to do such a thing. This is a bit spooky when you think about it. On the other hand, Kaufman's siblings would have to be in on it. They've all made statements that they watched him deteriorate from cancer in a way that can't be faked, and attended his open casket funeral. My personal opinion, Kaufman was believed to have died in 1984. He was such a troll, it's doubtful he could have kept his mouth shut and stayed hidden until 1985, let alone past 1999 when Man in the Moon came out in theaters. He faked faking his own death. This is the more Kaufman-esque prank, IMO. Anyone can fake their death. But the true novel prank is to learn that you are actually dying, then tell a bunch of people you're planning to fake your death, and leave generations of people scratching their head while you're laughing it up from beyond the grave. Elvis. He just went home. I like the version from Bubba Otep best. He paid an Elvis impersonator to take his place for a while, just to get a break. Then the impersonator died suddenly of a heart attack, and the real Elvis was stuck living the impersonator's life. The Big Mac has gotten smaller so McDonald's saves some money. I dunno, but I swear the Big Mac used to be bigger. Or maybe I am just fatter. This is a pretty common business tactic, and there's been a hell of a lot of research into it. Companies know consumers are happier paying the same amount for a often unnoticeable reduced portion rather than seeing a price increase for the same item. It's called shrinkflation. I think it should be noted it's not that shrinking a product makes people happier, it's that it makes the loss of value harder to detect. People sometimes word it like this practice is good for the customer, and that companies are just doing what the customer wants, which isn't true. Increase the price of a jar of whatever's from $1 to $1.20 and people immediately notice, because that's very easy to see and verify. Make the jar itself 5% smaller and redesign it so indents drastically decrease the volume inside, and now it's a lot harder to notice that you're getting less. The customer might be dissatisfied feeling that the jar didn't last as long as they had expected, but they might think that they're just mistaken. They'll think they used more than they usually do, or that their expectations were off, or that they weren't keeping track well enough. The customer is just as unhappy when the product shrinks. It's just that they don't realize what the source of that unhappiness is. A pound of bacon, at least in Canada, used to be 454 g. They went to 425 g, 400 g, and now have even seen down to 350 g. All this while the prices go up. Exception to the rule is Costco. I know you are on the metric system, but if it's advertised as a pound, wouldn't it actually have to be a pound? It isn't labeled as a pound of bacon, but the packages have always been a pound 454g, so that's what we call them. Sounds like they've reduced the sizes, but they'll be marked with the correct weight in grams, otherwise Justin Trudeau will come down from Ottawa and smack the bacon producers all the way into Quebec. Shelley Miscavige is either dead or being held prisoner by the Church of Scientology. Aren't they the only two options available for her? Witness protection, I guess. I like that there is the possibility of a positive reason she's missing. Just read the wiki article on her, very interesting. Not only did the cops out Leah R for filing the missing persons case, but they also stated that they talked to her in person and closed the case as not missing. Like, isn't it questionable at all that someone hasn't been in public since 2007 and someone files a missing persons case, and the Church of Scientology calls up and is like, nope, she's not missing here, she is okay, leave us now, she needs to go back inside, and then the cops are just like, okay, yep, she's fine. Well, the likelihood of the cops being in their pockets aside, this is the trickiest part of dismantling cults in general. They cover it in the Scientology documentary HBO did. People are documented as being held in these compounds and absolutely tortured, but the fact is that even if the cops raided them while they were being tortured, the people themselves would say that they are adults, they're of their own free will. Oh, I believe she is dead. She was likely once alive, but by now, likely dead. Eventually they will come out with a press release saying she had been battling some disease for years and died peacefully with her family by her side. Vomit. Edit. LOL, I meant she was once likely alive and a captive, but now is probably dead. Though given Scientology, she could have been an android. Thinking face. Yes, it does seem likely that at some point in her life she was alive. J. Edgar Hoover had ties to the mob and gave preferential treatment to certain crime families or organizations while crushing others. Also, his stranglehold on American intelligence made him a figure presidents feared. My understanding was that, specifically, the mob had photos of him and his boyfriend doing, you know, boyfriend stuff. Which is a pretty intense threat when you're the no queers or commies guy. They had a habit of staying at a mob-owned hotel together. Awful compromising position to put yourself in if you're the surveillance czar, and a hell of a coincidence at that. Not to mention that his best friend Clyde Tolson was Hoover's beneficiary in his will, moved into Hoover's house after he died, and is buried in the same row at the Congressional Cemetery in Washington, D.C. He retired from the FBI 3 days after Hoover died and accepted the flag at his funeral. They vacationed together, took all their meals together, socialized together. I don't know that the mob had anything on him, but if Hoover and Tolson weren't lovers, then it must have been one hell of a relationship. OMG bestie goals. I too dream of one day having a best friend so tight that the mob will use them to blackmail me. Just because I am sucking my best friend's dick doesn't make me gay. Not really. If you're already scratching their back, why not go to a place where you know other parties will be kept out? When there was no gay anything, the mafia ran gay clubs. Oh yeah, and that was part of their blackmail scam. They would wait and watch for someone who couldn't be caught doing gay things in a gay club to come, and then blackmail that person with the evidence. It was a fairly significant racket for the mob back in the day. This is the smallest conspiracy ever, but you know how when you pull a tissue out of a box, there's this dust that comes out from the tissue when it scrapes the perforated edge. I swear it's designed like that so that the dust makes you sneeze. And then suddenly you need more tissues. Rise up against big tissue. Finally someone said something about this. There's too much dust in general on tissues, it all gets fucking stuck in my nose, and I am back where I started. Switch to napkins, bro. I've heard similar that chapstick doesn't let your lips replace their moisture, so you have to keep applying and end up buying more. Any lip product with limonene in it does this most on the market today. The formula of Rosebud Salve pre-2014 was extremely moisturizing, but then they had to change the formula. And when they did, they added limonene. It just dries out my lips now. And I still have a bit left from 2013. That's like gold. Sorry I am on a rant now, but truly chapstick does dry out your lips, wax and limonene. Conspiracy theories seem to pale in their outlandishness when compared to actual history. Or honestly these days, just the news. Reality is stranger than fiction. Fiction has to be believable, reality does not. It took me a long time to realize that the expression "you can't make this stuff up" didn't mean that it was impossible to conceive of such an idea, but that if you did make it up, your story would be panned as unbelievable. The Department of Transportation bought way too many orange barrels, so most of them have to be stored on highways. You deserve an upvote. I literally travel past miles of barrels on a daily basis and rarely see anyone working. I saw a really informative response about this the other day. I wish I could even remember what sub it was in. But the part that stuck with me was they said they'll put the barrels out once to avoid moving them on and off the road repeatedly, and that in the early phases of construction a lot of the work is surveying, etc., and then waiting for approvals or whatever. So somebody is out there for an hour or two infrequently during a week or month, but the time and cost or labor to move the barrels back and forth doesn't make it worth it for brief trips. They actually don't own very many of them, they actually rent them. I've heard it can actually be a per barrel per hour rate, but I can't find info to back that up. Anyone else know? In this article, contractors are likely just the companies that own the barrels and earn the easiest money ever because governments can't afford to put up storage for them. Web address. A lot of entertainment companies are money laundering fronts. Don't even get me started on Entertainment 720. Prestige Worldwide 2. A Huff and Deback production. Boats and Hose. I've had this stuck in my head for the past 4 days, and I haven't been upset by it yet. Favorite non-pornographic magazine to jerk off to? Good Housekeeping. Did we just become best friends? Money Please. Where Dreams Come to Come True. Don't you dare speak ill on Entertainment 720. I do know I have read somewhere about certain low-end movie production companies are in fact used to make shit or low-budget movies in order to move money around for tax write-offs and such. They make unbelievable deals with the devil. And it's all kinds of companies. Oil companies frequently launder through movie companies as a philanthropic enterprise. South Africa particularly. I thought it was mattress stores. My dad's friend owns one, and I helped him with his books once. Holy crap, the margins. There's more margin in cheap mattresses than there is in drugs. He was getting queen beds from China for $18 landed and selling them for $250 like candy. His place was 5 employees and made over $1 million a year. BRB opening mattress store. There's always money in the banana stand. Someone said that of paintings sold for millions and I thought, oh god yeah, why didn't I think that before? It's not just paintings but antiques, wine, jewelry, rare musical instruments, charities and you get the idea. And horses. You would be amazed how race horses and show horses are used to move money or avoid taxes. As someone who spent 8 years in art school, it's the only way to make sense of what is an insanely illogical art market. Ace Gallery in LA, one of the biggest galleries in the 80s and 90s, was notorious for selling paintings 2 or 3 times, stiffing the artist and not delivering the art to anyone. How do you get away with consistently selling paintings and not delivering them? Wouldn't that be an easy slam dunk court case to prove the thing that was bought never showed up when it's still beautifully displayed in a gallery? That Area 51 is heavily involved with unidentified flying objects. The only difference being that said unidentified flying objects have been designed, built, and tested by the United States Air Force. They keep Area 51 hyped in secrecy because they don't want you to know it's all really stored at Area 52. I still to this day believe that for every sock that goes missing in your dryer it turns into a Tupperware lid in your cabinet that fits nothing. I have seen no evidence to disprove this. That Mexican drug cartels continue to exist because they do the government's dirty work without implicating the government. Edit. Ed Caldron interviews and Narcos paint a fairly accurate picture. Los Narcos Gringos Spanish video by Jesus Esquivel illustrates the extent of U.S. involvement and how the cartel exploits racial tensions in the U.S. to ensure attention from authorities is focused elsewhere. It's worth watching. The drug cartels have the Mexican government in their pocket, not the other way around. Fort Knox has no gold in it. I am not sure that's really conspiracy level. Before 9 or 11, Fort Knox was an open post. Literally anyone could drive on post and right up to the fence surrounding the alleged vault. Keep in mind there was no M-piece or any type of security near it. Any half-decent nightclub at least has a bouncer, and Fort Knox didn't even have that. I went to basic training at Fort Knox, talked with a drill sergeant that had been there for a few years. His opinion was, if there was anything worth any value in the vault, they'd at least be a do not enter sign on the fence. There wasn't. Hide in plain sight. Erdogan has manipulated the renegade part of his army to reveal themselves. I heard on NPR that the idea was kicking around. It's also incredibly possible that when the army staged its coup, he had moles that gave him info, and was just very well informed on what was about to go down. The government doesn't want you to know, but ducks are free. You can just take them. Actually, ducks are covered by the Migratory Bird Treaty Act and are not free. Except during duck season. Wabbit season. Duck season. Tommy Wiseau is D.B. Cooper. For those of you who don't know, D.B. Cooper is a famous American thief. Aboard a plane flying from Seattle, Washington to Mexico City, before the plane was over Reno, Nevada, D.B. Cooper robbed everyone on the plane, took all of the parachutes, and jumped out of the plane. And was never seen again. Nobody knew his name, and he spoke with a strange accent. Tommy Wiseau showed up seemingly randomly, with a ton of money, has been said to be older than he says he is, and speaks with a strange accent. At one point people found a ton of money which was said to be DBS ransom money or stash, and the guy they were investigating didn't look much like him, and the evidence was never convincing, and the whole attempt was some History Channel bullshit. Tommy Wiseau, however, fits the bill. In the skydiving community this comes up every so often. D.B. Cooper died in the jump. He jumped into heavy forest at night. Even with a round canopy that's dodgy as fuck. He had basically no control over where he landed. Even if he landed safely, he had no way of knowing where he was and thus how to get out. Wasn't some of the money found buried or submerged somewhere? Indicating that he did survive. Some of the money was found on the side of a river years later. But it was not conclusive that the money was buried by a person as opposed to covered by sand over time as a result of natural processes. That sounds fun, but D.B. Cooper was said to be mid-late 40s in 1971. He'd be pushing 100 years old. I can see Tommy being in his 70s, he's allegedly 64. I think Tommy was just up to no good, or got in trouble somewhere, and changed his identity later. The ages just don't mesh for me. Reddit is run by a single collage student that has no clue how to make a search bar. Subreddit collage for colorful and intriguing collages. A one-stop shop for your collage viewing needs. I got a pretty harmless one. Stevie Wonder can see. The world's elites are in on it, which almost got blown open when George W. Bush waved at him. Edit. Big thanks to all my Stevie Wonder truthers out there. Thank you all for this interesting dialogue. Didn't Shaq say he ran into him in an elevator once and Stevie Wonder said, "Hey, Shaq," before Shaq said anything? I've heard that story too. I think it was Anthony Anderson that said he's not blind, and he said on a late-night show, invite him, and put something on the ground for him to trip on, and the motherfucker will step over it. I know I am butchering it, but it's funny and interesting. I can't remember what it's called, but that's a real type of blindness. Basically, the eyes are mostly normal and work just fine, but the connection between the brain and the eyes is broken. The subconscious will know there's something there, but the person will never actually see it. I've seen Stevie Wonder take his glasses off before, and his eyes do not appear normal to me, so I don't think this is that type of blindness. I've heard it called blind sight. Basically, the part of the brain that actually creates an image for the conscious mind is broken, but all the subconscious parts of sight still work, like avoiding obstacles. I actually wrote a paper on blind sight for my cognitive neuropsychology seminar way back in 1996. At that time, at least, the most compelling explanation of blind sight was that the projection of the optic nerve that goes directly to the brain stem is still functioning. This means that you can still respond to things in your visual field with reflexes, because they originate in the brain stem rather than in the brain, without being aware of any visual information. So you can flinch if something has been thrown at you, for example, without knowing why you flinched. I was going to take issue with your use of the phrase "the subconscious parts of sight," because there are many subconscious aspects of vision that are not preserved in blind sight. Why do I panic whenever I see a certain shade of blue? But I suppose reflexes that originate in the brain stem are subconscious. Or perhaps unconscious. I think the term subconscious is more often used to describe higher processing that takes place in the brain itself that we're unaware of, like he subconsciously resents his mother. Didn't he also drive someone's car one time, while going over to record some radio show? I've been spending my whole life with him thinking he can see. I know he can see, the American Idol judge, 70, said on the Kelly Clarkson show on Wednesday. I went to his house once. He says, "Want to hear a new song? I've got it in the car. Come on, go with me." He said, "You sit on the passenger side, I'll sit on the driver's side." He cranks the car up, he puts the tape in, right. And then he does this, turns around and starts driving back down the driveway. I screamed, "Stevie, what are you doing?" And he said, "Aw, got you, didn't I?" Source. Web address. To be fair, the car thing would be something I absolutely would do if I had that kind of fuck you money, and was blind. Memorize a course and fuck with someone. That's crazy. The odds of him just guessing it was him must be like finding a needle in a haystack. I like to imagine that Stevie Wonder says "Hey Shaq" to anyone that comes in an elevator, knowing one day he'll get it right. After hearing this story, I looked into it a bit, and found out that most blind people aren't %100 blind. So he can probably see vague shapes, light, and motion. When he saw Shaq on an elevator, he probably just saw the iconic massive silhouette of Shaquille O'Neal lumbering towards him, all blurry, and knew who it was. Yeah, I remember in middle school a blind lady came in to talk to us about being blind, and it was really enlightening. She could tell when the lights were on or off. And she could tell when someone walked in front of her. She said most blind people can tell between a light and dark room, and that something like 40% of blind people can tell the difference between Shaq and Hakeem Olajuwon. If you see someone about 73 and 400 pounds in front of you, just say "Hey Shaq." Odds are pretty good you'll be right. I didn't think he was 100% blind. Like, he can see almost nothing, but there's a shred of blurry vision or something. Yeah, I think people misunderstand what it means to be legally blind. I am not sure what kind of disorder he's meant to have, but lots of people who are legally blind have some sort of vision. Shadows or shapes or colors. And honestly, Shaq's shadow would be pretty recognizable, lol. Plus the sound of that slab of man meat moving around. Perhaps it's like holding a frosted glass pane right in front of your eyes. The government is spying on us, the Patriot Act is terrible, and somebody is most likely watching me right now. Oh wait, I forgot, that one was already proven. And the guy who proved it is currently living in exile in Russia, because the US government wants to criminally convict him for exposing their illegal spying. And nobody cares. Edit. It's hugely surprising to me that people are only hearing about this for the first time. The person I am talking about is Edward Snowden. His whistleblowing efforts are like one of the most important things to have happened in the 21st century. The US government is trying to paint him as a criminal, when the reality is he's probably the greatest living American patriot for the sacrifices he has made for not only the American people, but for people everywhere, in exposing a US-run global network of illegal surveillance. Julian Assange is another activist who exposed US government war crimes, and whose life has been destroyed because of it. Nobody cares about that either, but they most definitely should. Edit 2. Shills and people who view the world through Fox News will attempt to paint both of these people in a negative light, but a small amount of independent research will show you that what I am saying is emphatically true. We care. There are just very few of us. The government constantly reposts this question to see what we know. No, we don't do that at all. Edit. I mean they. The truth has slipped through the tongues. Automobile and oil companies have been working to impede or hide developments in renewable energy solutions. There is actually a lot of evidence for this. I was a climate activist before seeing it, but the Years of Living Dangerously documentary series pretty well confirmed to me that big oil, gas, and coal companies are standing in the way of renewable energy solutions. Which is dumb, because you'd think they'd want to pioneer those fields and define legislature before anyone can say free energy. What you forget is that almost all emerging renewable tech is ideal when decentralized. No boats or pipelines. Solar thermal being the exception, but it's got big energy backing. Right, and if they preemptively lobbied to get the law in their pockets, they could eliminate transportation costs almost entirely, then pocket the difference for future investments. The CIA is responsible for the crack epidemic. That one's partially true. One single thing can't be entirely responsible, but the CIA was involved. The question is whether it was knowingly or unknowingly. And it's far from the only drug trafficking the CIA took part in. Vietnam War enters the chat. We fuck around in Nam and have a heroin crisis. Vietnam becomes a huge exporter of opium. We fuck around in Latin America, and we go through a coke boom, and Latin America experiences a monumental explosion in cocaine production. We fuck around in the Mideast, and Afghanistan becomes the new leader in opium production and export. And we have new heroin epidemic. It's really hard to convince me all of that is coincidental. I thought Gary Webb did a good job of proving that. Web address. He also died of suicide by 2 bullets to the back of the head, which basically confirms that he was correct about the whole Contra cocaine CIA thing. Seriously, reading about the 2 shots being declared a suicide by the coroner is about the biggest WTF. That the CIA let JFK get assassinated. Wait, I actually am curious about this one. Look up the podcast Death is Just Around the Corner, specifically their JFK series. It's quite long, 5 parts each at around 90 minutes. But it's incredibly informative. The narrator is quick to point out what is speculation, what there is factual evidence for, and what comes from the official narrative. The gist of it is that JFK kept on working against the CIA in multiple ways, like de-escalating the Cold War as well as trying to put the CIA under the control of the executive branch, and was made an example of. Lee Harvey Oswald was almost certainly a CIA asset. Unrelated to JFK, but Manson was also almost certainly a CIA asset. Some good investigative journalism just came out on this within the last year actually, and if you look into the official record of some of the stuff the CIA was doing, MKUltra, giving black neighborhoods syphilis to see what would happen, Iran-Contra, etc. And consider the fact that nobody that oversaw those crimes was ever punished anything more than administratively, it seems pretty naive to me that they would have stopped doing that kind of thing. I mean, there are people instrumental in the Iran-Contra affair that are in the Trump administration right now, lol. Edit. If you can't sit through 7 HRS of content, I think you can start with episode 4 and get enough out of it to walk away with the big picture. The first 3 really help put things into context though. A time traveler has traveled back in time, to the year 1963. However, he does not know the exact date. He sees a CIA agent nearby and asks him, "Is today before or after the JF before?" Isn't this the plot of the Umbrella Academy S2? Actually, the plot is that Diego, being dumb as a box of rocks, tries to save JFK, and in so doing, start World War III. High-end art is a scheme to launder money and avoid taxes. Yeah, that's kind of known to be true. Also look up horse farms, all the rich people have one. As somebody who works for the government, some of y'all grossly overestimate the government's competence and secret-keeping abilities. Didn't the military spend like $1 million to see if the jets affected pregnant horses? I really hope this is true. That gave me a good laugh. Even if that is true, do you not realize how little $1 million is to the US military? Granted, every penny is pinched and accounted for, but they have a lot of pennies. I believe conspiracy theories are the ultimate conspiracy. They send the message that there is some invisible hand controlling things, meaning there's nothing you can do to change it. They instill complacency. Yeah, and I agreed with a dude a while back who said he thinks the term was coined in a way to make conspiracy theorists look like tinfoil, hat-wearing crazies, so no one would take any conspiracies seriously. As George Carlin said, you don't need a formal conspiracy when interests converge. That's all a conspiracy is, multiple people deciding on something that benefits them that no one knows about. Unless I've got that way wrong. I think when people have as much power as they have, and we know vast wealth means power, then they'll exercise their power. If they don't, it means they never did, but they wouldn't be in the position they are in if they didn't. So one follows the other. Like, what is power except this abstract thing that can only be measured when you wield it, if that makes sense? You can't be powerful, can't feel powerful unless you act on it. Not completely, but that whole humanity resets every 7,000 years due to some big chance to be looking believable as of now. The United States government now admits the weather balloon that crashed outside Roswell, New Mexico was swapped before anything was shown to the press, and has for some time. Here's what they'll never admit officially. The real weather balloon in question was built by the Soviets, specifically for the purpose of measuring nuclear fallout. We wanted this technology for ourselves, stole it, drove it out into the middle of the desert, accidentally ran it into the ground while trying to reverse engineer it, and had to run a cover-up campaign in order to not have ICBMs shot at us, avoid pissing off the Soviets. That's what really happened. Seriously. Comment edited to reflect the Soviets not yet having had ICBMs at that time. What follows is a direct quote from user Nugo's comment, which may be found below in this thread. There's a video out there of a long lecture about what really happened at Roswell. I won't make you sit through it, but here's the bare bones. This is by far the best explanation for what happened at Roswell. There is a point in the atmosphere way up that's called the sound channel, roughly delineating the warmer, or denser lower atmosphere from the colder, or less dense air of the upper atmosphere. When sound waves pass through it, they hit the upper portion of the sound channel, and the cold, less dense air deflects the wave downwards. When the wave hits the bottom of the sound channel, it gets deflected up. Then, when it hits the upper limit for a second time, It gets pushed back down again only to get pushed back up. And on and on and on. The sound gets trapped in this thin band of atmosphere, and can travel long distances, and still be heard, much farther than any other area of the atmosphere. Only in this thin band. Whales in fact use the water version of this effect to communicate over vast distances. They dive down into the oceanic sound channel, and their songs can be carried across the ocean. Literally across the ocean. Back in the 40s, this wasn't known. They knew about the oceanic sound channel, but as far as they knew, the Americans were the only ones who thought. If there's one in the ocean, shouldn't there be one in the atmosphere too? So, what was happening in the years after World War II? The Russians were testing nukes, and this information was of the utmost importance to US and her allies. Learning when the Russians got nukes was the most important thing in American national security. Yet, how to do it without having people in Russia spying everywhere? The noise from a nuke is so loud that it would literally travel to the other side of the world in the sound channel. So the Americans had a way of detecting Russian nuclear tests, and the Russians had no idea this was even possible. Discovering the sound channel was one of the biggest breaks of the Cold War. But they had to find a way of getting extremely sensitive microphones way up into the atmosphere. Can you picture professional quality microphones from the 40s? They look wild. Space age. Sometimes they were strung on springs. All chromed. Now imagine what a weather balloon looks like, silver foil that looks like mylar. Well, now imagine what would happen if a shiny, silver foil weather balloon crashed in a field covered in space-age microphones. You have locals reporting otherworldly, flexible silver metal, and all this stuff they can't identify. The police say it's a weather balloon, but oops. US national security demands that no one know about this specific weather balloon. So now they have to lie about everything and cover up the information that did get out. Here's what the guy who found the wreckage at Roswell had to say. Large area of bright wreckage made up of rubber strips, tinfoil, a rather tough paper, and sticks in Paul Harvey's immortal words. And now you know the rest of the story. I was close. That's actually not true, they declassified it. It was a top-secret American project led by Professor Maurice Ewing to detect the sound of nuclear explosion at high altitude, so Americans would know when the Russians were testing nukes. It works on a pretty simple principle, so they covered it up so the Russians wouldn't be able to reverse engineer it. Web address. Edit. This has been declassified since the 90s. Web address. This is actually the most plausible explanation or theory I've heard. I'd like to propose the Benny Hill theme test for conspiracy theory veracity. Let's say you're creating a soundbite about a conspiracy theory, and you need to choose background music. Does ominous, dramatic music seem appropriate? Probably fake. Does the Benny Hill theme seem appropriate? Probably true. That is a wonderful test. Are you suggesting we reopen the Yakety Sax files? The biggest companies in the world own the government. Not the other way around. Saudi Aramco, for example. That there is a circle of cultural terrorists that whisper conspiracy theories to some gullible people, and are the origin of most conspiracy theories that go around sowing mistrust between factions. That J.R.R. Tolkien actually wrote Beowulf in Old English and then translated it into modern English just for shits and giggles. Can't remember where I heard this, but I've 100% believed it since I did. Before you say that it's impossible and too crazy, let me remind you. Tolkien wrote a language, created a fictional universe for this language with dozens of wars and kingdoms, 8 more languages, several unique species and gods, and hundreds of developed characters, then wrote a children's book within this fictional universe. If anyone was crazy enough to do it, it was him. That there's no brilliant people working behind the scenes. Our government and world leaders are full of bored people of moderate intelligence, coasting and growing off of YRS of structure already in place. Edit. OMG you guys, I got multiple awards for the first time TYSM. That sounds like most jobs. That really debunks a lot of government conspiracy theories though. That the government is so good at what they do that they control us via barely perceptible means. In reality, it is a mass of disorganized departments of people pushing paper. It is absolutely that. I am pretty sure the U.S. government knows things about UFOs that they aren't telling us. That's not to say I believe UFOs are alien spacecraft. I don't know what they are. Almost like they're unidentifiable objects. Dat fly. UODFs. Social media companies are manipulating people towards supporting the candidate of their choice. Whether it's Biden or Trump, I honestly can't say. It seems like they'd hate Trump, but he's wonderful at driving social media activity. But we do know Facebook has a history of manipulating users' emotions. Watch The Great Hack. Yeah, this is an actual conspiracy, not just a conspiracy theory. That's a conspiracy theory. I thought that was fact. The lost cosmonauts. I think it's absolutely possible that there were attempts by the CCCP to launch manned aircraft into space before Gagarin, and that some of the cosmonauts died. This one's been bouncing around, but given how much we now know about the Soviet space program, after the USSR collapse, including the details of embarrassing failures like Soyuz 1, it seems odd that this in particular would be so completely concealed. I think this one doesn't hold up for the same reason that the fake moon landing conspiracy doesn't hold up. The other side would have found out, and would have shouted it from the rooftops for propaganda purposes. In that era we paid a lot of attention to every single rocket launch from the USSR. My dad spent time in Turkey for US intelligence surveilling rocket launch telemetry. This one is thoroughly debunked and not particularly plausible. The recordings were produced by a couple of Italian hoaxers, are in terribly translated Russian, and depict a crew of 2 when the USSR wasn't capable of sending 2 people into space at once. Also, any extra secret missions would be detectable by the West, who had plenty of radar, and the ability to pick up any transmissions themselves. Would they have ignored the propaganda coup of revealing a Soviet failure? The government was behind Throwback Thursday in order to get us to digitize and upload pictures that they would not have had access to in order to help improve age progression or facial recognition algorithms. Like Facebook's 10-year challenge. Why not just use driver's licenses? Doesn't go back past 16-ish, but you have the data, and it updates every time people renew. Ancestry DNA and the rest of those ancestry websites are run by the government to have access to people's DNA to cross-reference crimes, etc. Wow! You are still with us. Thanks for being such a nice person. As long as you are here, why not like this video and subscribe to our channel? Also, you can press the bell icon, so you won't miss any future uploads.